Good morning everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is about creating a useful item out of a slow stitched piece. Now if you remember, I attended a one-day, well, I was actually there for a few days doing 2 courses, but there was a one-day stitching a slow stitch piece to make a wall hanging. And we were provided from the Roxy Creations girls, Rachel, Sarah and Judy, a panel of Rachel's fabric, which we were encouraged to cut up, rearrange, create some focal points, etc., and create this piece. Now, long story short, we were given a piece of old blanket which belonged to a Steffi, Rachel's husband's family. So lots of memories, and I thought I'm going to showcase that blanket and not completely cover it, which led me to the back of this piece not being stitched into it so that that blanket could be shown. And I said to the girls at my table at the time, I might try and make this into a pouch, because at that period of time I was traveling with this pouch. Now, hello Diane. Diane makes lots of pouches and bags. And she came to Susanna's retreat and then my retreat, and she gifted me at my retreat this pouch. Now there's lots of videos on YouTube showing these being made, a lot of Tilda ones I see pop up on Instagram, but what Diane's done, which is what just is so, in my world, is she's taken the standard scenario where you insert a zip into a 2 panels of fabric and then attach some vinyl and then bind it. But where it comes into my world is Diane also did a slow stitch piece on the front. Now I have to confess, Diane, I picked up this in my travels when I was down with the Roxy Creation girls and I stitched it on there. I just think that slow stitch panels made into pouches are just fantastic for even stitching at a later date. I can see if I come across a snippet of a blue tone, I can just see it being added. So yeah, that's what I'm loving about bringing our slow stitch world into something useful. So this pouch was with me when I was down at that retreat, and I had pattern in here, like paper pattern in here, and on this side I had all of my Gosling quilt elements that I was hand sewing, and it just traveled beautifully in my suitcase. So I now get why these are everywhere in the YouTube world. So if you want to Google zipper pouch, you'll see heaps and heaps of videos. What I'm going to show you today is how to take a slow stitch piece and turn it into a zipper pouch, especially when your zipper pouch idea was not the original idea when you started the slow stitch piece. So there's been a lot of adaptations I've had to do to make this work, where Diane has gone into this project knowing that this is her piece here. She needs a backing panel that feels like wadding in there. She's machine stitched all of this on one of those fancy sewing machines. And then this side she's got the vinyl with the zipper portion attached. This is just so handy, guys. So I'm sitting there at Green Door Studio stitching away, chatting to the girls saying, I'm going to make this into a pouch. So what I've ended up doing is something a little bit different. Is I wanted to see Steffi's blanket. So if I did this style, Steffi's blanket would be in here, right? So I sort of gave up on the whole idea and put it to one side thinking, well, it's going to be a journal cover. At least then I can, see Steffi's blanket here, which sort of was where it went. It sat on the cupboard for about 4 weeks. So I've thought about it again and I thought, you know what? I can do this. So I've been fiddling around and I pulled it off. So it is going to be folded like a journal cover would. And what I've done is, if you can see here, I've inserted the pouch idea that Diane used in that piece at the top here. So I've got a little mini pouch here, and the plan is to put a second one here. So that's what I want to show you today, is how I've taken a piece that I guess was sort of folded like a book, like, what do you call this? Landscape. Is that the right word? I don't know, it doesn't matter. But it's, if you thought it was going to be a journal cover and you changed your mind, there's a better way to describe it. This is a really good way of, you know, adapting it to become a pouch. So, start at the beginning. The first thing I did was I got myself some of this vinyl. Now, I didn't know where to get it. And at the time when we were in this hired house, I took a photo of some vinyl that was on the timber table in this house we rented. There was Dawn, myself, and Susanna. And I sent it to Diane. I said, oh, I found some vinyl. It's here. They won't miss a square. So I took this silly photo and sent it to Diane. So I'll insert that now in the video so you can sort of, you know, see what I was being a fool. I'll just pause the video. Okay, you've seen the picture. So I was being an idiot. I did not cut into that tablecloth. But Diane said that she gets hers from Spotlight. So I had full intentions of heading to Spotlight to get some. It is in the soft furnishings department, where you buy your curtains and things like that. So it's vinyl sold to cover timber tables or bench tops and things like that. But before I went to Spotlight, I swung into Dewdrop Inn just to, you know, peruse the establishment like you do. I was pretty good, actually. I only bought a Wonderfill cotton and the vinyl and some pins. All right, okay, I was a little naughty. I bought some clover pins because I'm just chasing pins at the moment, and I was running out of this because I'm using it in my piece that I'm stitching for Susanna's retreat in March. So got myself another one of those. And I said to the girls, I said, by any chance do you sell this vinyl? And yep, they do. And it come in a little roll, which I'm loving because I'm guessing Spotlight probably make you buy meters of the stuff. So this is plenty for me. So if you do have some fantastic stores near you that, you know, sell fabrics and things, just check in with them. Probably can buy it online too, but I've never used the product before, other than really heavy duty stuff that I've used on tables. One thing I will say is be careful with anything you put on it, because it seems to mark easily. Even the rubber band that was around it has marked this ever so slightly. But once it rolls out a little, that just disappears. So if you use those clips or bull clips in any way, don't let it touch the vinyl. Make sure you've got fabric between you and this vinyl. So that'd be my hot tip if you're investing in a little piece, a little roll of this. I don't know how many meters here, but I'm sure if you wanted some, the Australian girls, contact Linda at Dewdrop Inn and she can send some in the mail to you. Now, putting that aside, let's have a talk about the mechanics of this piece. Because it's not, you know, designed to be so, I've had to think outside the square. I did all this stitching of pieces coming across and I'm thinking, oh, it's all going to get covered. But it's worked out because vinyl is see-through. So what I've done is I've created a panel that will tuck in here. And I've taken into account a bit of a spine. See that gap there? Imagine a book and there's heaps of pages stitched into the spine. I'm leaving that space because these pockets are going to fill up. So my theory is when it bulks up, you're going to need a bit of a spine. Don't butt the two pockets together. Give yourself a little bit of space. Now, in this scenario, I've stitched all this lace on the inside here. So what I did here is I just went around and really stitched it down. Because see how that's flipping and flopping around? That's all right for the old journal cover idea. But now I need that really secure. So invisible stitching that down will be my first port of call. Now you're probably wondering what this white edge is. Because I'd never used vinyl before, I had a feeling that I'd be wanting to stitch into this decoratively with all of these little trimmy bits to make it look like it's scrappy. So I went to the cupboard and I found this vinyl that I got from my mum's stash when I cleaned out her sewing room, and it's a 12mm bias binding, so it's tiny. So it looks like so. You then iron it so that you get that nice crease, and then that little edge can be slid over the edge of your vinyl. And to put fabric on the vinyl that is secured for me to invisible stitch to, it'll make sense in a moment, I run the sewing machine around it. Okay, so now I've got this little fabricy edge on my vinyl that allows me to stitch into without having to go through the vinyl. Now I did that because I thought I needed to, but I don't think I did need to, but it's up to you. It's just an option. If you have, I guess, pain in your hands, stitching through the vinyl, like, it is easy to do if your needle is sharp, but it is a little bit push back on your joints. So this would be a solution that may allow you not to have to, you know, stitch through this product. It is very thin but, and I found that as I proceeded to attach this pocket, it's sort of, I was just going through it. So something to consider, but a step I probably wouldn't do again. And to be honest, it was so fiddly. I was putting this tiny itty bitty binding on and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, imagine doing this for a, let's say you were making these to sell at a local craft show. Oh goodness, I'd be soon ditching that idea. But I thought I'd mention it. So what we might do, just so that I can proceed with you guys, and we've got plenty of time, is I'm going to stitch down this lace. I've got a little bit of thread here. Then I'll talk you through the rest of the project. Now, technically, this is all done by hand, except I did bring the sewing machine out for the zipper. You can hand sew a zipper in, not a problem. I've done it before, but I will say I'm a little bit heavy-handed. You know how it is. I riff and pull and things can come apart. So I decided to use the sewing machine to attach the zipper to those pieces of fabric that sit either side of it. And once I stitch this down, I'll show you what I mean. So I did consider removing this lace because, like I said, this project was not going to be this. So I thought, oh, I have to take the lace off, but I really like the lace popping through the vinyl. It's just added, you know, a whole nother layer. And my intentions is, now that these pockets are going to be in position, I'm going to add more lace. So I get even more layers of different textures. So I do have my lace container nearby. I probably won't have enough time to stitch this whole piece together and finish it on camera. So it'll be a bit of a stop and start video. So I'm just doing this so that, let's say I popped something in here that was quite sharp, as in a paper pattern or something, it might catch on this lace. If you think your lace is going to be in the way, don't do this step. Just skip it. I think it'll be all right. There's heaps of little stitches here now to hold this in position. I could even do more there. See how that's moving a little bit? I think that's potential of a snag. So maybe I will have to pause the video shortly and sort of catch up so that you don't see me sitting here and doing all this. So I guess this video is about if you've got a slow stitch piece in the cupboard that you're wondering, what am I going to do with that? Or you just like creating these types of panels, you know, turning it into something useful is good instead of it sitting in the cupboard. And I've been seeing these pouches with this vinyl for yonks popping up on video or Tilda Facebook groups, or, you know, so you can apply quilting techniques. You can just do slow stitch. Great project bag. So now, in addition to this, we've got the lovely Kate in the Nest, who is doing a pouch series. Every month she's providing inspiration to you via a song that she selects, and then see what that song does for you in the way of inspiration in fabric stitch and things like that. So what I've been thinking of doing is a pouch a month like Kate is doing, but in my style. Now I do want to do one that is very much a salute to Kate's style, because everyone's got different styles, and when you go to classes or you do workshops with, you know, different artists, you surrender your way of doing things and you go with their way of doing things, and that helps you pick up different techniques that, you know, complement your thing. You may never go back to it and do it again, but you've tried their style. So I do want to do 1 month where I do just all about Kate. Now I'll show you, that'll probably be next month, or maybe not, I don't know. I am away a little bit, March and April. So what I'm going to do is decide which one of those trips is easy for me to take the Kate project. Now, the Kate project is going to be using these little handles. I've had these rattling around. They're even different colours in my craft cupboard for some time. So I've got a little bit of old blanket, and it'll be all about sourcing fabrics and, you know, flower to flower, leaf to leaf is the saying that Kate uses to help her compose her collages. And because I'll be travelling on the roads around Australia, I thought maybe I could visit some regional opportunity stores or thrift stores and pick up supplies as I go. I don't know, that might be wishful thinking. Depending on my colour scheme, that can be quite of a challenge. So stay tuned for that coming up. Just not sure when it'll be. It'll be sometime in the next 6 months. Now, back to this. So this technically is the start of my first collaboration with Kate and her pouches, having done it with the Roxy girls in the workshop, and Kate was actually there too. So while I was stitching this, we had a little chat and sort of introduced ourselves and spent a bit of time together. So I said to her at the time, I will participate because it sounds like fun, and Kate's got a unique style, and I want to surrender to that style to see, you know, how it complements myself and the learnings that I come from it. So yeah, that's the plan. So what I'm doing now is I'm edging this little piece. Now I'm putting the side pieces on first. I've got to remember the procedure of which I did all this. Now when I pin this, I'm leaving a gap. And it's probably good the binding's there, but let's say the binding isn't being used because you've got the strength to go through this vinyl. Great, beauty. I'll probably make the next one exactly like that. But luckily it's here so you can see what I'm doing. My little edge, where's a ruler? Let's measure this up. And these measurements are because of this. So they're not, you know, set in stone. I just felt that it was the right dimension to suit the fabric that was already here. So I got myself a 1 1/4 strip. Now this technically was a jelly roll, which is 2.5 inches. I cut it in half, thought, yeah, it's still pretty big, but if I fold it in half again, it should work. So it ended up being 1 1/4. And then once folded and pressed with my iron, it brought it down to 5/8. So just a fraction over 1/2 inch. But that's only because that's what I started with, and it was okay with this imagery that I'm working on here. So you have to play with that yourself. You can't really use my measurements. Now I do need to trim this a little bit because I've got a little edge snipping out there from that stitching of it down on my sewing machine. So what I want to do is encase this now so it looks scrappy. So when I lay this down just before the fold, 1/4 inch is where I'm stopping. I'll bring it right up to the camera. You can see the fold, and my piece of vinyl with that tape on it is stopping just before that fold. I want to put a ditch of that. Well, I'm creating a ditch or a gap to put running stitch in that will attach this to the piece. Does that make sense? So when I went to do that, I soon realized that I could actually stitch through the vinyl as well. So my next stitch went through that as well. And then my third stitch, which you can see the fabric is past the edge a little and going in, it went through there as well. So my 3 rows of stitching, which you can see here, easily went through not only the vinyl but also caught the fabric 3 times. When I planned this project in my head, hence this binding, I thought I'd only get the 1 in. So that's why I left a gap. And I thought, well, you know, it's still not a bad idea because it's less that you have to push through with your hands. So that's the theory for leaving that 1/4 inch gap. So there's pretty much nearly 1/4 inch gap, 1/4 inch of binding, and then 1/4 inch of fabric. 3 rows of stitching. So anyway, it's up to you. Have a fiddle with it. There's no right or wrong. So I'm now going to encase that and pin it. And I'm going to pin through where that binding is. And because that fabric's in there, it's made it a little bit easier to actually just catch everything onto it without having to force my way through, you know, the vinyl. But like I said, I did not know how I was going to construct this. I had to figure it out. You may come up with some better ways. Is this a tutorial? Technically not. It's just me mucking around trying to make something out of something and exploring a new project using this vinyl to make some useful pouches. Must be because I'm traveling a bit this year that I'm thinking outside the box of, you know, what am I going to take to stitch? How am I going to transport it? One of the trips is in a caravan, and I've taken everything. Okay, start back at the beginning. My parents had a caravan, and we did too for many years, and we did heaps of trips, either to cattle stations where we camped on the side of a beautiful river, or we went to Adelaide via the inland tracks from Queensland and then come along the coastline home via Melbourne, back through Sydney and, you know, all our way home. So we had some great times. I'm so glad we did that. Now that I look back on how life is, I'm pleased we hit the road with Mum and Dad. And luckily we had the opportunity to with our business. So Caravan got sold and we knuckled down to build our Christmas store business. So any caravanning we did, we sort of had to hire a house or something nearby that, you know, Gaz and I had somewhere to stay. And the caravan of Mum and Dad's, it just stayed wrapped up in the shed for whenever it was needed. So long story short again, in the process of tidying up the estate, we decided to buy Mum and Dad's Caravan because it's in perfect condition and it has an ensuite and it's a small little one and it's just fantastic to tow. Lots of memories with it as well too. So Gaz was like, yeah, great idea. We might be able to use a caravan, you know, get out and about again. So I've done that. We've towed it back to our place at, you know, my home, and I've scrubbed it because it's been locked up for probably 4 years, 5 years. When Mum got sick, it sort of got mothballed. And so I've scrubbed it. I've pulled everything out. Oh, some of the memories. There's even projects in there that Mum and I were doing. And anyway, don't get me started on all that. So I've cleaned everything, rearranged everything. I've also dug out all the bits and bobs in the way of kitchen stuff that was in my caravan and joined it all together. So happy days. Caravan is ready to hit the road. So I'm planning a trip in April with some friends to go to some friends of my parents who have a cattle station in central Queensland. So can't wait. We're going for, I've booked for 3 weeks, but I don't know. Depends on the weather, doesn't it? You have these grand plans and then suddenly it's flooding rains and everyone bails and we all go home early. But I'd love minimum 10 days. By the time you get there and you set up and then you get to, you know, a week in and you're starting to relax and you have routines and you've done a load of washing and you go to town every other day to get, you know, supplies, which is, you know, all an adventure. 10 days is pretty good because you're really living that life, I find. But I just love it up there. It's my most favourite place. It's just the most beautiful property with the horses and the cattle and the muster dogs. And, it's just, not a fan of the wild pigs, but, you know, there's a few ornery bulls I've met in my time there as well that line me up, you know, when I go walking of a morning through their property. But anyway, I can run. I think I can outrun a bull. Stay tuned. So I've been thinking about, you know, projects that I can fit into a cupboard in the van, and that's where the story was leading. As I'm going through this caravan, I'm like, right, that's for clothes, that would be shoes. I can fit pantry supplies there. There's the pots. There's plasticware in the way of containers to hold things, and also utensils. And then I've got a cleaning cupboard and I've got a big cupboard ready for projects. So that's how this has all sort of been, you know, coming to fruition, if you will, in my head. So there you go. There's a bit of background story. So to have the collaboration with Kate making pouches, it sort of is timely for me. Whether I get 6 done or 12 done or as many as Kate does, she does a lot of pouches, that girl. We'll see. We'll see, but I can certainly, I've got ideas for a definite Kate one. I'd love to do a pouch sort of more like this and use one of Rachel's printed panels again. So I think I'll do one very similar to this. And then the other thing I've got is I've kept back from sorting out Mum's cupboard all of her denim skirts. And she wore a lot of denim skirts. So they're little ones that go to just above your knee. And I've got them in all sorts of denim colours. There's stripes, there's white, there's a pale pink. They're just gorgeous, gorgeous fabric. So I'd love to make a project. If you can think of anything out there that you reckon might prick my interest, or a YouTuber that's made something, let me know. I'm open to suggestions. Actually, Diane, if you're listening, there was a duffel bag that you brought along. Diane did a pop-up shop for me at the Hervey Bay retreat with all of the bags and pouches and glorious things that she makes. And there was this beautiful duffel bag. Actually, one of the staff at the hotel was seriously considering purchasing it, but I don't think she did in the end. She was Yeah, she kept looking at it every time she'd serve us a meal. She'd swing by and look at this duffel bag. So, Diane, the duffel bag, is that your own creation, or is it a pattern that maybe I could purchase and have a go? Because, gosh, I'd love to use something, make something out of all of Mum's denim skirts. And this duffel bag had lots of pockets, so then I could stitch and collage into the pockets. And yeah, so if anyone knows of something out there, let me know. So while I've been yibby-yabbering, I've just pinned those casings on, those scrappy bits. You could do something like this where they're smaller, but to be honest, I thought, you know, that's going to be so fiddly. I just cut long pieces. There's my little gap to allow me to stuff this full of goodies. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the zip. So, as I said, I did want to do the zip with the sewing machine to give it some strength. I need to unpick that too. I did a bump stop and I don't need it. So I'm just going to do that while I yibby-yab it to you as well. Where's my quick unpick, guys? If only I'd put things back, but I don't. I just don't. I need a fairly strong needle. So as you can see by the stitch line in that zip, the sewing machine was brought out to play. The fabric I've used either side of it is exactly the same as what I've just put around this plastic. Same measurement, same size, just slightly different adaptation. Let me get rid of all this stitching. It was something I thought I needed to do, but I didn't. There's lots of videos of putting zips into things. And like I said, you can do this by hand, but I'm heavy-handed and I would hate to, you know, rip the zip out because my stitching is just not adequate enough. And, you know, if I'm sitting in a paddock on a station stitching under a shady tree and a bull comes and starts to chase me, I might be a bit rough on that zipper and I'd hate to destroy it. So it's best I use a sewing machine. Anyway, so what I did, hang on a minute, I folded it and ironed it like I did that to get my crease, right? Then I laid the fabric down on my zip using the crease as my stitching. Now, see the, oh, you can't see. Can you see that one? So in the crease is my sewing machine stitch. In order to see where to stitch and to keep it straight, I turned the zip over and I laid it like exactly where I knew it would need to be. So I just did a bit of sneaky looking to go, righto, there's about 1/4 of an inch gap, there's the fold in the fabric, and I lined it up. See how the zipper has a funny little change in texture? Let me bring it up to the yeah, see it there? It's right in the middle, and you can see there's like threads that have changed in the way that they've made the zip. That's a line of which you can use to stitch along. So using that line as my guide, right along it I went, takes a lot of the guesswork out. Then I laid the fabric down and I just kept checking to see where that ironed fold was and this stitch guide, and I laid them together, and then I'm like, oh, hello, that's about 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch that I can see. Yeah, 1/2 an inch of the fabric was peeking through. So depending on your binding, you might go, well, there's 6 inches peeking through, and I pinned it. And then all I had to do was just follow the zip guide, the little bumpy texture I can see in the zip. So I'm not sure if that's what you do here. No, they've top stitched. Diane's top stitch. Okay, forget about that. My top stitching I wanted to be by hand. So, but first I need to make sure this little guy was nice and strong. So I'll just recap using the little imagery that you can see, not imagery, this little line in the zip. and get the light right. You'll see it. If you grab a zip out, you'll see a guide that they've put into the zipper during manufacturing. And if you line that guide up with your fold that you just did with your iron and get a bit of an eyeball of the distance, you can then just whip down there. And it's so simple, just zoom. You could do this by hand, no problems at all. Then I did it on the other side, same thing. Lined up my fold to that little mark that is in the zipper. All zippers have it. And then because it's ironed, everything just folds down nice and neat. So I've got a really strong entry point, and here is my gusset waiting for this edge, and that's it. So I'll pin it again. Once again, I'm going to place my piece of vinyl in the middle there. So I've got a gap of which to stitch in. A line of stitching goes over the fabric, and then I can do a third line of stitching on the actual vinyl to catch the edge of everything. So now it's just a case of pin it, and that's it. Just take your time with your measurements, but that'd be my only caveat. I'm going to slide that along a little bit because see that metal stopper? I want it hidden. So I'm just going to move it. Now, when buying a zip, always make them a bigger than what you think you need because you're going to trim your zips back. So, for example, this little pocket is an 11 inches. My zip is 13, I think. Yeah, it's a 13-inch zip. So it's 2 inches bigger than the actual pocket. So that's another hot tip. Buy your zips bigger than what your pocket actually is, because then you can trim it back. And you create a bump stop, so somewhere to stop your zip flying off the end, by putting in some fabric. Now, you can stitch that bump stop, which I did thinking I needed to, but I didn't need to, hence why I just unpicked it. So that's now attached. So what I'm going to do is sort the bump stop out with you guys, and then I'm going to probably toddle off and stitch all this down. But what I'm going to do is trim that back. All right. And I just went and got myself a couple of little pieces of fabric. Same thing. These were the same. So visually, they're pretty much just a smaller version of this casing that I put around it. And this is just going to encapsulate that. Now, if you want it not to have a raw edge, because there's a risk that the threads out of this will get caught in the zipper, but it's the scrappy look. You could do something along those lines where you stitch it down and you turn it over. So now you've got a nice neat edge there, but I didn't want that. I wanted it more scrappy. So I'm going to follow the artisticness of that and just find halfway, finger press that, pop it in position, and that's my bump stop. And just pin it. Like so. Now we're nearly ready to attach the piece to the slow stitch. Now let's do the same here. We're going to move the zipper out of the way, so we want to get into it. I think it's about to rain. We're expecting rain, and there's a shower coming through for us. Whether we get much out of it's another thing. All right, so there we go. It's trimmed off nice and straight. and we've got to put our bump stop in. And there's a few different ways you can do bump stops. I don't even know if that's the right word, but it sounds good. That's what we're going to use. Just finger press that so it's roughly the same as everything else we've been doing. I'll have to find my zipper charms. I bought some from Sobe Beck's store when I went to see it in Newcastle. I have to dig them out and see if there's something that suits the piece. It's a good thing about pouches is you then need to get zipper charms. Need to accessorise. So that's just there and there, just to hold it. So that now is all pinned and ready to be attached. So I just come over to my piece, and if I've done all my measurements right, I can sneak it in. I come back from this edge a bit because I've done all this work and I didn't want to cover it. But if you don't have that, you could probably come up to there and you'd have a deeper pocket. But due to the sacrifice of artisticness, my pocket isn't as deep. But I do need that gap there. So now it's just a case of transferring some of these pins right through the whole lot. Not all of them, just something to hold it. You will probably bend a pin in the process, but that's, you know, just part of it, isn't it? So I'm just now pinning it everywhere just to make sure it stays. Now I'm going to get my Pearl 8 crochet cotton and I'm going to do top stitch everywhere, but it's also going to catch all of the layers, plastic, fabric, vinyl, and attach everything in position. Oops, that didn't catch underneath. You could use a couple clips on the side if you wanted. Now, because it's a slow stitch piece, something you might notice is your piece will be wonky. That's just what happens with slow stitch. The more you stitch something, the more it sort of, you know, puckers in and carries on. Don't stress about it. It's slow stitch. And it's looking like a handmade bound item. So things like this might be visible, but maybe with a little bit of movement and trimming, I might be able to sneak that back a little bit so it's a little bit neater. So that's just something to watch out for. Does it bother you? Maybe it doesn't. I'll probably jiggle this a little bit. Like I think my folding of my fabric's a little bit off there. So if that was folded a little neater, it might just fit, possibly. Because it's hand sewn, I can fiddle with all that. There you go, I've just got it in, but did that create a bump? And now it's hanging over this edge, possibly. I think it is. So it might need to be a little bit sculpted. See that? So all things you need to consider when you're doing your pouch. Yeah, I'm going to just trim that a bit. It's pretty good there, but it loses itself there. So I'm going to nibble a little bit more off this end because that's our trimmed zip end. A little bit. What have I got a pin under there? A little bit off of this end as well. Yeah, it is raining. Lovely. Hey, Fudgy. You out of bed? And I'm thinking that will get us nice and neat. So put that one back. Look, it's slow stitched in the end. We're all crooked and bumpy and it's to be expected, isn't it? It's funny when you show people these types of pieces and you can just see their cogs in their heads turning going, gee, that's messy. It's the style. Oh, I've really messed this up here. Get that in there, that in there. Actually, that was underneath there, wasn't it? Because I did that edge binding first, then the zipper, then my bump stop. So now we got it. Just fiddle with it a little bit. Like I do this fiddling that I'm doing now when I was actually stitching it. I'm wasting probably a bit of time here. But I just wanted to, point out that you can modify it a little bit if you find that it's peeking past the perimeters. I tried my darndest to get it as close as I could to the pouch size when I was planning cutting off the vinyl. And then I come in a little bit because I thought this thing's all wonky. So there we go, bump stop in place. I'll get that a little bit squarer, but doesn't matter. Like, I'm overthinking it. I really am. All right, guys. So the running stitch, where you're doing the running stitch on the pocket edge where you would enter the pocket, do not stitch that down. Remember, you've just got to slither through there. You can go through all layers easily. If your hands hurt, just go through the fabric that you've put on the vinyl edge, the bias binding. That'll be enough to secure it. Now, when it comes to the sides, it is once again, just go for it and stitch it down. Now, if you're someone with your hands are hurting and you want to try this, my thought at the beginning was once I attach this binding to my binding to the bias binding, I would then gingerly go through this edge and just invisible stitch it all down, like do a little stitch right along that edge to seal the pocket. But I haven't needed to do that because I can get into it. I have decreased the size of my pocket because I've got 3 rows of stitching here, all of which is securing the side. It's very strong. But if I hadn't have done that, I would stitch it out here. Even an overcast stitch might work for you. And then that would then have given me a little bit more space in my pocket, but I'm not too worried about that. Now there's one here that's unstitched, so I'll show you that next. I've just got some vintage crochet cotton. That was such a big roll and it's just slowly disappearing. It's like just when you think that'll be gone on this project, it's still there at the end of the project. It's just meters. So I've picked a needle that is really sharp and as fine as I can go for the thread I'm using. So in this case, this is quite a fine crochet cotton. It's not like the standard, this stuff. I'd need a bigger needle. A bigger needle means more pushback from stitching through all of these layers. So something else to consider. Try and use a finer cotton for the attaching of this. All my decorative stitching was done with a thicker but finer version of it here. So when it comes to the bump stop, I did 3 rows of stitching there to secure bump stop to the pocket and to the decorative panel. And this side I did 4 rows because it was a little bit wider and I just kept stitching and lost count. So, slow stitch, you can do what you want, can't you? I've already stitched down this outer edge here. So it is technically attached, but just to make it a little bit more secure, I'm going to sneak my knot in here and aim for the middle. And that inadvertently is landing right on the bias. So you can go right through and it easily pushes right through, or you could just attach this to the bias binding if that is there. So what I'm going to do, because, I have the bias binding, is I'm going right through every other stitch. And I know it's attached and then popping straight back up, ready to do 2 or 3 stitches further along. But of course, if that bias binding wasn't there, I'd be going through every layer, vinyl, fabric, every layer, which I'll do for my third row. You don't need to do 3 rows, but I did find, due to the width of my fabric, this was very floppy. So that's why I did the third 3 rows. Just see how you go. At the end of the day, it's slow stitch. You can do whatever you want. So that's how I've attached it. I've then slid to this outer edge of that little binding. Fudgy, what's happening? Yeah, he's gone outside and it's raining. I heard it rain, mate. It's not good for pussycat fur. Yeah, not happy. So now I'm actually pushing through vinyl and back to my piece behind. Yeah, Puss, what's I heard? You told me, mate. And that's really going to, see, it does work. Pussy, please. I know. Oh, you got raindrops on your fur, mate. That's what's wrong. The cat's fur. Wipe them all off, darling. It's stopped raining now, so you were just unlucky and you copped a shower on the cat. He's dry. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it, guys. Everything's attached. It feels nice and secure. I can see my decorative border through the vinyl, which adds a little interest. It'll probably snag on everything, but you know, it is what it is. It was adapting a piece that was not meant to be this. So if I was to forethought a little, I would make sure that, you know, this didn't happen. But having said that, it does look rather cool seeing that in there. I like it. So it's up to you how you wish to proceed. Now I'm up to where the bump stop is, and I'm just going to do a sneaky little knot in under there that no one will notice. Finish it off. You could even use some pliers to pull the needle through if you don't want to be bothered with the bias binding, but you do want to, you know, stitch it like I have. Get some little pliers. Oh, Pussy wants to come up. Hang on. He's tapping my leg. Come on, little buddy. All right. Pussycat's up. Now, I think that's pretty much it. Everything's attached. I'll toddle off now and attach that pocket. Before I go, I do want to embellish my piece somewhat more because, you know, you've got to do that. So I've got my container of lace here. And the other reason too is this piece has scrappy bits everywhere. There are some long lineal elements to it, but this is very long and lineal. So to break it up a little bit, I thought maybe there was an opportunity to stitch some additional lace on just to make the eye, you know, not see it as such. If I do that, that's going to be floppy. Will that matter? No. That leaf, could they go over? Could it all go over? Of course it could. Okay, so we're going to trim. See, now I'm working back on the front of this piece. For goodness sakes, when does it ever end? So I'm trimming that. This will just help break up the eye that I've used continual pieces of binding to encapsulate the vinyl pouch. So what we'll do is we'll have it sneaking over there. I didn't want to cut all of those beautiful machine edged pieces of lace. So let's pin here first. So I'm just creating more work. I did notice too that that's not secured, so I hadn't yet finished that. So that'll make me work this corner. And like I said with the pocket, the pouch that Diane gave me, in my stash I had that blue flower and it was lying on the table next to the pouch. So I put down my Gosling quilt and just randomly stitched that on. I could see potentially more going on that because that's just the way it is. So this little piece of lace now can come across here and just build on the collaging that is there. And it'll just break up that lineal line a little bit. So yeah, just thought I'd show you that as well. We've got lack of pins. So that's the plan. I will finish stitching the remaining pocket. I'll go and put some additional laces on this just to, you know, just because. And my Roxy project from Robinson Greendoor Studios one-day event has now been utilised into something that potentially can go with me on my travels. And as a nod to Kate and her project, don't squish your nose. He's rubbing his nose on his cheek on the stand that holds the iPad. Fudgy's, you know how they smooch things? He's doing that to the knob. So if it was wriggling, I do apologise. I'm going to get rid of the pins that marked my centre. Those pins were just to show me where that line is. I didn't want to draw on the blanket, so I just put a couple pins in there and you know, just stay away from it. Just like a book, create a spine. And there'd be no reason why you couldn't even... Oh, we could stitch a needle book into this, couldn't you? Oh my goodness, where does it end? Imagine a cloth needle book here. I think I might have to do that, guys. Oh my goodness, fudge. We've just gone and created another project. It can't be too bulky. Otherwise, well, it can. I've got a spine. So what would we do there, fudge? Hang on. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, in here I have my supplies of needles and bits and bobs. And down here is a needle book, just as an example. So imagine just a simple little needle book, like that's got a little press stud. I saw those at the Dewdrop Inn. So imagine that there and there, stitched in, and you could have one for your pins and one for your needle, or you could just make one big one, double the size, and that then gets stitched in there as part of your little travel kit. Fudgy, please. So yeah, there's an additional idea. We might do that. I might do that. That'll give me a project. You know what I'll do is, I know this will hold something. Fudgy, come on. Oh, I'm going to put the pussycat down. It's going to step on a pin. What I might do, I got it. Yes, there's a needle book going in there. The supplies to make the needle book, I'm going to pack now into the pouches so that everything's there. And then in April, when I'm in the caravan, I'm going to pull this out and go, oh, what goodies did I give myself? And I'll make my needle book and attach it. So it'll become a project within the project. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm going to do. So you won't see me make that needle book, just pretend that it's happened. And yeah, I can pop that in the caravan. Make sure the needle book's up the right way. And that's ready to go. And I've got some supplies, and whatever supplies I don't use on the needle book well, then this is just holding some bits and bobs for goodness knows what. Probably other projects. All right, guys, I'm going to toddle off. I'm going to finish stitching this, and yeah, you might see a photo at the end. Yeah, you will. I'll take a photo of the end of it finished. And of course, there's the piece that I actually stitched way back when. Made into a pouch inspired by this. Thanks, Diane. I think that's it. I think that's all I need to tell you. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. All right, guys, look after yourselves. Have a great day. And there is my slow stitched panel. Now a useful flip it out. Needlebook's going to go in the middle. Zip, zip. Yay. All right, guys. See yous. Bye.